James Harlan lived on the edge of the desert plains of Adoria 5. A lonely planet where the wind howled at night and the suns burned hot during the day. He was once a proud rancher, strong and full of life. But now, he was old, tired, and mostly forgotten by the galaxy. His house was made of metal and old wood, worn down by years of dust storms and silence. No one came to visit, not even his own children. They lived far away. Busy with their lives on richer planets, James didn't blame them. He just wished someone would remember he was still alive. Every morning, before the sun rose, James would wake up and feed the animals. He had a few horned grazers, some feathered ground birds, and a grumpy old workbot named Max, after his chores. He sat in his old wooden chair on the porch, holding a metal cup of coffee, staring out at the empty land. There was no sound except the wind and the soft calls of desert creatures. Time moved slow, but James didn't mind. He had nothing left to wait for. At night, he'd light a fire, cook simple food, and look at the stars. He used to dream about space travel, about flying across the galaxy with his wife, Mary. She had died many years ago from sickness, and James had buried her under the blue leaf tree behind the barn. He talked to her sometimes when the night felt too heavy. "Still here, Mary," he'd whisper, "still kicking." One evening, as the sky turned deep red and purple, James saw something strange. A flash of light crossed the sky, moving fast, too fast for any shooting star. Then came a loud boom, and the ground shook. Something had crashed nearby. Smoke rose in the distance. Just past the far fence, James grabbed his old plasma rifle and put on his boots. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something he hadn't felt in years: curiosity. Max, the workbot, rolled beside him, buzzing low. "Stay back," James said. "Could be pirates or worse." He walked slowly toward the smoke. Rifle ready, the crash site was less than a mile away, and when he got closer, he saw the dirt was burned and cracked. In the center of the black crater stood a small silver ship. Damaged but not destroyed, the ship hissed and blinked with strange lights. James had never seen one like it before. It was not human-made. Suddenly, the door opened with a soft hum. James raised his rifle, but then he froze. 11 figures stepped out, tall and graceful. Their skin shimmered in the moonlight, some purple, some silver. Their eyes were large, glowing faintly. They wore flowing armor that looked both ancient and advanced. They didn't look like soldiers or pirates. They looked like something from an old Earth storybook. James didn't speak, but held his ground. Then one of them stepped forward. She was the tallest, her eyes deep green like forest leaves. She looked at him and said, "Are you the one called James Harlan?" Her voice was calm but powerful. James blinked. Surprised, she spoke perfect English. "That's me," he said slowly. "Who are you folks?" The woman bowed her head slightly. "We are the widows of HFY." She said, "We have come across stars, following the old path. Our journey ends here." James lowered his rifle a little. "Ends here? What are you talking about?" The woman stepped closer, and the others stood silently behind her. "We followed the map of hearts," she said. "The ancient scrolls said a man of great strength and honor would wait under the blue leaf tree." James took a step back, eyes narrowing. "Wait a second. That's my land," he said. "My wife is buried under that tree." The woman nodded slowly. "Yes," she said softly. "That is why we came. She led us to you." The wind blew between them, carrying dust and silence. James looked at the strangers, trying to make sense of her words. "And why did you come all this way?" he asked. The woman looked into his eyes and said something that made his breath stop. "Because you are our chosen one," she said. "You are our husband." James dropped the rifle. It hit the ground with a soft thud. Its mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked from one alien woman to the next, all of them watching him with quiet eyes. In his whole life, nothing had ever shocked him like this. Not war, not loss, not age. He took a shaky breath, staring into the night sky. His old heart beat loud in his chest. Was this a dream, or the beginning of something stranger than anything he had ever known? James didn't sleep that night. He sat by the fire with the 11 alien women sitting quietly in a circle around him. The desert wind had gone still. As if even the air was listening, James poured himself another cup of coffee. His hands shaking slightly. He had faced hungry beasts, lightning storms, and land pirates in his younger days. Nothing like this, not once in his wildest dreams. Did he imagine a group of alien widows calling him husband? The tall one with green eyes sat closest to him. Her name was Soraya, and she spoke with gentle words. "We are the last of the HFY," she said. "Our husbands were warriors, protectors of our people. But all of them were lost in the Great Silence War." James stared at the flames. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said quietly, "but what's that got to do with me?" Soraya reached into a pouch at her side and pulled out an old scroll. The paper was thin like glass, glowing faint blue. She unrolled it carefully. The symbols looked alien, but something about them felt familiar. In the center of the scroll was a shape round with markings. James leaned closer, eyes wide. "That looks like my wedding ring," he whispered. Soraya nodded. "The scroll speaks of a soul who loved with great strength, who lost but never forgot. It says he will live near the blue leaf tree." Guarding the place of memory, James felt his heart tighten. He had buried Mary under that tree. Just like she wanted. Could this really be some kind of prophecy? Or was it just a strange trick of fate? "I'm no hero," James said slowly. "Just an old man trying to hold on." One of the other widows, smaller and with soft silver skin, spoke up. Her voice was like a song. "Our people believe that true strength is not in the sword, but in the spirit," she said. "You are still standing." Even after losing everything, James looked around at the group. They didn't look like troublemakers or liars. Their eyes held pain, but also hope and something deeper, faith. He rubbed his eyes, trying to understand. "So, what do you want from me?" he asked. Really, Soraya looked at the others, then back at James. "We want a home," she said. "A place where we can start again. A place where no one hunts us, where no one owns us." James blinked. "Owns you?" Soraya's jaw tightened. "Our kind is rare now," she said. "Some see us as trophies, others as weapons. The bounty fleets follow us, trying to take what is left of our power." James felt a chill. "And you brought them here?" he asked. "To my ranch." Soraya nodded slowly. "We had nowhere else to go," she said. "But we will not bring harm to you if you ask us to leave. We will go before the next sun rises." James looked out into the night. The land had always been empty, always silent, but tonight it felt alive. Something old was waking inside him. He thought of Mary again, how she used to feed lost animals, how she believed in second chances. James took a deep breath. "You can stay," he said finally, "but I don't know what kind of husband you think I can be." A warm smile spread on Soraya's face, and the others bowed their heads in respect. "You don't need to be anything but yourself," she said. "That is enough." Over the next few days, the ranch began to change. The widows moved like they had lived on the land their whole lives. One repaired the old barn using tools James hadn't seen in decades. Another planted alien seeds that grew overnight, glowing with blue light. One of them, the quiet one with glowing white eyes, sat for hours with the horned grazers speaking to them in low tones. The animals listened, calm and peaceful. Max, the workbot, usually stubborn and slow, started moving faster under the guidance of a widow with mechanical skills. James watched all this with quiet amazement. He helped where he could fix in fences, showing them how to collect water from the air tanks, teaching them how to brew real ranch coffee every night. They sat together by the fire, sharing food and simple stories. James laughed for the first time in years, but not all was calm. One night, while James was walking past the stable, he heard a soft sound crying. He followed the sound and found the youngest widow. Curled in the shadows, her name was Elia. Her face was in her hands. Her shoulders shook as she wept. James knelt beside her. "You all right?" he asked gently. Elia looked up, eyes full of tears. "I miss him," she said. "My bondmate, he died protecting me." James said nothing for a moment, then sat beside her. "I know what that feels like," he said. "Losing someone you thought you'd grow old with." Elia wiped her eyes. "You're not like the others," she whispered. "You don't see us as broken." James looked out at the stars. "Everyone's broken," he said. "It's what we do after that that matters." Above them, the stars blinked, but one light didn't move. It hovered quietly far in the sky, blinking red, watching. The days passed, and the ranch began to feel like a different world. What was once dry, quiet, and lifeless now moved with energy, color, and laughter. James Harlan, the old rancher, watched from his porch as 11 alien widows turned his forgotten land into something alive again, something he thought he'd never see again. Hope. Every morning, James woke up before the suns and found the widows already working. One was feeding the grazers, softly humming a song from her homeworld. Another was stacking bricks, building a second shelter beside the barn, using strange tools that floated and sparked. The land, once cracked and dry, now had green patches growing, glowing plants from alien seeds taking root with surprising speed. James wasn't just watching, he helped where he could, guiding them through ranch work in his old, slow way. He showed them how to mend a broken fence with metal wire and thick nails, how to ride a wild dart beast without getting thrown off, how to dig water lines and fix the windmill pumps. The widows listened, learned fast, and worked harder than any crew James had ever seen. At mealtime, they sat together, sharing both earth food and alien dishes. One of the widows, named Lyra, taught James how to cook with glowing root vegetables that could heal cuts and bruises. Another, bold and cheerful, brought him sweet purple berries that made his old bones ache less. James laughed with them, even danced once when the mood felt right. His body was stiff, but his spirit was lighter. Each widow had her own gift, her own story. Soraya, the leader, had once commanded a ship before it was shot down. Her quiet strength helped keep the group steady. Elia, the youngest, still carried sadness in her eyes, but smiled more now. She followed James often, asking about earth animals, about Mary, about love. Then there was Dea, who had a sharp tongue and fast hands. She fixed James's broken tools in minutes and taught Max the workbot to move smoother than ever before. As the ranch grew, so did the bond between them all. The widows called James bondmate, but not in a way that made him feel pressured. It was more like a title of respect, one he hadn't earned through strength, but through kindness. Still, James couldn't stop thinking about what they'd told him about the scroll, the prophecy, and the threat that followed them across space. He tried to ignore the feeling at first, but something deep inside warned him. He'd seen it before, the quiet before a storm, at night, while the others rested. James sat by the fire, staring at the stars. He noticed one light that didn't blink or move. It stayed in the same place, like an eye watching from far above. James told himself it was nothing, but his hands stayed close to his old rifle. One evening, Saria joined him by the fire. Her eyes were calm but alert. "You feel it too," she said softly. James nodded. "Someone's watching us," Saria sighed. "The bounty fleet," she whispered. "They never stop hunting. They believe we carry weapons from the Silence War. They want to capture us, use us, or worse." James looked into the flames. "You said I was your chosen one," he said. "But I'm not a warrior." Saria placed a hand on his shoulder. "A warrior isn't always someone who holds a weapon," she said. "Sometimes it's someone who stands and doesn't run." James said nothing. But her words stayed with him. The next day, a small drone flew over the ranch, silent and fast. It vanished before anyone could shoot it down. James called the widows to the main house. "We need to prepare," he said, "if they're coming. We need a plan." They gathered around the map table in his home. Drawing lines in the dirt, they spoke of traps, alarms, hidden paths, and defense towers. James opened his old barn and pulled out crates buried under tarps. Inside were old weapons, left over from his militia days, dusty, outdated but still deadly. The widows inspected them, impressed. They added their own Tekenergy shields, cloaking nets, and sonic traps. The ranch was no longer just a home. It was becoming a refuge, a stronghold. The land began to shift, responding to their presence. The plants grew faster. The air felt cleaner. Even the animals seemed calmer. It was as if the planet itself wanted them to stay, wanted to protect them one night. As James walked the edge of the property, he looked out at the stars again. That same red light blinked in the sky, closer now. He knew the peace wouldn't last forever. But he also knew something else. He wasn't just an old man anymore. He was a guardian, maybe even a symbol, and for the first time in years, he was needed. Behind him, the sound of soft footsteps echoed. Ilya walked up and slipped her hand into his. "We're ready," she whispered. James nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the sky. "Then let them come," he said. The wind had changed. James could feel it in his bones. It wasn't the kind of wind that brought rain or dust. It was something deeper, something older. The kind of feeling a man gets before the ground cracks or the sky breaks open. Every corner of the ranch was calm. But James knew the storm was coming. The widows worked harder than ever. They set up watch points, built traps into the ground, and taught James how to use their strange tech. He learned quickly. Though he never stopped calling it alien nonsense, they only smiled and kept teaching. At night, they took turns watching the sky, listening for signals while James went through old files and notes he hadn't touched in years. One evening, while digging through his storage unit behind the house, James found an old metal box. He hadn't opened it since Mary passed. Inside were pictures, letters, and one thing that made his hand freeze: his wedding ring. The gold band was plain, but it had strange scratches on the inside. He never paid attention to them before, but now he saw they weren't scratches, they were symbols. Symbols just like the ones on the HFY scroll, heart pounding. James brought the ring inside and showed it to Saria. Her eyes widened the moment she saw it. This confirms it," she said quietly. "You really are the chosen one." James frowned. "I keep hearing that, but no one tells me what it means." Saria motioned for him to sit. She called the others, and together they sat in a circle around the fire. "It was time for the full truth," Saria began. "Long ago, our people made a prophecy, not a magical one. but a promise written in code after the Silence War destroyed our world. The last queens of HFY sent a message into space, a seed of survival. They placed it into the mind of a human. Through technology lost to most species, a partner of peace. A soul strong in sorrow but unbroken. James stared into the fire. Mary, he whispered. She had headaches near the end. Said she heard things sometimes. Sci nodded slowly. She was chosen to carry the memory pattern, she said. But she didn't know it. The pattern passed into you through her touch. Her love, her final breath. The silence was heavy. James's chest ached. So you're telling me? My wife was part of this. Sci reached forward, gently placing a hand over his. Yes, and through her, you hold the keys to our survival. Not just leadership, but memory, our history. Our lost techniques, even our language. They're inside you, waiting. James shook his head. I'm no computer, I'm just a man, one of the widows. The soft-spoken healer named Vera stepped closer. Not anymore, she said. Your mind holds encoded knowledge. We just need to unlock it. She took a small glowing device from her belt. May I? She asked. James hesitated, then nodded. She placed the device against his temple, and a soft light passed through him. His breath caught. Images flashed before his eyes, symbols, battles, ancient buildings. Names he didn't know, but somehow recognized. Then, silence. James opened his eyes, gasping. I saw it. I saw it all, he said. The widows watched him with wide eyes. Then the bond is complete, Sci whispered. You are no longer just our protector. You are our archive. Our last leader, James, stood slowly, feeling different. Stronger, but also afraid. Why me? He asked. I didn't ask for any of this. Sci looked at him with soft respect. No true leader ever does, she said. The next morning, James began training, not just in weapons or movement, but in strategy, in chivalry code and history. The knowledge inside him was deep, and it came faster now. He started remembering things he never knew: where to place defense towers, how to read alien star maps, how to command a team under fire. The widows followed his orders without question, not because of power, but because of trust. Even Max, the workbot, responded faster under James's voice. The ranch no longer looked like a quiet patch of land. It looked like a base, a fortress, ready for something big. But not all was well. One night, James was walking the outer fence when he spotted something. A small black drone, almost invisible, stuck in the wires. It blinked red according. He crushed it under his boot. But the message was clear. They're close, he said. Back in the house, Sci nodded. Yes, she said. And when they come? They won't ask questions. James looked around at the faces of the widows, his team. His people now. He grabbed his old rifle, now upgraded with alien parts, and strapped it to his back. Then we give them a welcome they won't forget, he said. Fire in his eyes. For the first time, James Harlan didn't feel old. He didn't feel broken. He felt ready. James Harlan stood at the edge of his porch, staring at the stars. The night was quiet, but his mind was loud. He could feel it in the air. Something was coming. Not tomorrow, maybe not the next day, but soon. The red blinking light in the sky was gone, but its warning stayed behind like smoke in his chest. The widows moved around the ranch like shadows, fast, focused, and fearless. They had been hunted before, but this time they were ready to fight back. James had changed too. He no longer walked with slow, tired steps. His voice was stronger, his back straighter, his old hands Once stiff and shaking, now moved with purpose. He had the memories of the HFY in his head, now battle plans. Language, tactics. It was like carrying a map of another world inside his mind. And every morning, he trained like a soldier. The widows trained with him, and each day, they pushed harder. They showed James how to fire alien rifles that hummed with silent energy, how to throw a light disc that returned like a boomerang, and how to use a wrist shield that could stop a laser blast in return. James taught them old Earth skills, how to track footprints in dust, how to use shadows to hide, and how to fight dirty when the rules no longer mattered. The barn became a training hall. The field behind the house became a combat course. The windmill tower turned into a watch post. Max, the workbot, was fitted with a turret and began patrolling the fences. Even the animals seemed to sense the change, staying close to the ranch. Alert and uneasy, James divided the widows into teams. Soraya and 3 others would guard the main house. Dea and her crew would take the barn and outer sensors. Elia would command the high ground behind the blue leaf tree. The place Mary was buried. No one passes this tree, James told her. Not ever, Elia nodded, her eyes fierce. They'll have to go through me first, she said. They built more traps, some simple like spiked pits and false gates. Others glowing and advanced, powered by HFY tech. James laid old Earth mines near the far hills, the ones he had saved from his militia days. The widows added cloaking fields around the ranch perimeter, making it look like empty desert to scanners. It wasn't perfect, but it would give them a chance. A few extra seconds if the enemy came in fast, at night. They gathered in the main house to review plans. The table was covered in maps drawn on paper and sand. James marked paths with stones, showing where the enemy might come from. Soraya placed glowing crystals on key spots, trigger points for energy fields and defense towers. The room glowed dimly, a strange mix of old wood, alien lights, and dusty dreams. But there was still doubt. One evening, after everyone had gone to rest, James sat alone by the fire, holding Mary's ring. The gold band was warm in his hand. He whispered, "I never thought I'd wear this in a war." He closed his eyes, remembering her voice, her laughter, her belief in second chances. "I hope I'm doing this right," he said softly. He didn't hear Soraya walk up, but she sat beside him in silence. After a long pause, she said, "You're not the same man we met weeks ago." James gave a small smile. "I'm not sure if that's good or bad." Soraya looked at the fire, her face calm. "It means you're alive again," she said. "And that's something worth fighting for." The next morning, the ranchers came. Not many, just 3 from nearby sectors, but enough to make a difference. They arrived on dusty transports with rifles and armor patched together with scrap. One of them, an old friend named Boone, climbed out of his buggy and grinned. "Heard you've got company, Harlan." James shook his hand. "Not the kind you want for dinner," he said. Boone looked at the widows and raised an eyebrow. "You've been busy." James nodded. "We're building something here. Something worth protecting." Boone looked out at the ranch, at the towers, the traps, the strange new plants, and the alien women moving like trained scouts. "Looks like you already are," he said. That evening, they stood on the rooftop together, watching the horizon. The sky was clear, too clear. James narrowed his eyes. "They'll come at night," he said. "They'll want to scare us before they strike." Boone tapped his rifle. "Let 'em try," he said. "We're ready." James didn't say anything, but deep inside, he knew it was true. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just waiting for the end. He was preparing for a beginning, one made with fire, blood, and purpose. The night fell heavy and thick. The stars above were silent, but the land below was holding its breath. Every sound seemed sharper, the creak of metal, the low hum of alien tech, the soft wind brushing over the sand. James Harlan stood at the center of his ranch, rifle in hand, eyes locked on the horizon. This was it. The enemy was coming, and there would be no turning back. Max the workbot rolled by, scanning the field. Its new weapons gleamed under moonlight. The widows were already in position. Soraya stood near the barn, her armor glowing faint green. Daya and her team crouched behind the fence line. Ready to strike, Elia waited by the blue leaf tree, a small blade in one hand and a plasma bow in the other. The others moved like shadows, hidden, quiet, prepared. Boone and the few local ranchers had taken the high ridge. They weren't many, but they knew how to fight. They had defended their land from raiders before. But this was different. These weren't just thieves or bandits. These were bounty hunters, trained, armed, and ruthless, sent to capture the HFY widows and claim whatever power they still carried. Then it happened. A red flare shot up into the sky. Exploding silently above the ranch, the ground shook seconds later as sleek, dark ships broke through the clouds. Engines roaring, they landed fast and hard. Kicking up dust and heat, dozens of armored figures poured out. Faceless and cold, their helmets glowed. Their weapons hummed, they moved like machines, but with the hunger of predators. James took a breath, then shouted one word. Now, everything exploded into motion. Traps lit up with blue fire, catching the first wave of attackers. Mines burst from the sand, sending metal and bodies flying. The false gates opened into dead ends, filled with energy nets. The bounty hunters were fast, but the defenders were faster. The widows moved with grace and fury. Using their alien weapons with deadly skill, one spun through the air, slicing a soldier's weapon in half before knocking him out cold. James fired his rifle from the rooftop, hitting targets with precision. Boone's men rained bullets and blasts from above, covering the widows as they charged. Max rolled through the chaos, blasting from its mounted turret, its voice shouting in Old Earth code. Defend! Defend! Target locked, but the enemy kept coming. More ships landed, more soldiers rushed in. They surrounded the barn, trying to break the door down. James jumped down from the roof and ran toward the barn. Blasting 3 soldiers as he moved, Dea met him halfway, breathing hard. "They're pushing through," she shouted. James gritted his teeth. "Then we push back." He slammed the barn door open and pulled out one last surprise and old rail cannon powered by the backup cell Mary had hidden years ago. He aimed it at the line of ships and fired. The blast cracked through the sky like thunder, tearing one of the enemy dropships in half. The others pulled back, scattering. The tide was shifting. But just when it seemed like they might win, a tall figure stepped from the smoke. Unlike the others, this one didn't wear a helmet. His face was scarred, his eyes cold, and his armor dark as night. "Harlan," he growled. "You've protected what's not yours long enough." James stepped forward. Standing between the man and the widows, "They don't belong to anyone," he said. "Least of all, scum like you." The man raised his weapon. "Step aside." James didn't move. "Come and take them," he said. The two clashed in the center of the field. Weapon to weapon, fire and dust all around them. The man was stronger, faster, but James fought with something more purpose. Rage and the memory of every soul lost to silence. He dodged, blocked, then struck with his upgraded rifle, knocking the man to the ground before the hunter could rise. Elia's arrow flew past James. Striking the enemy leader straight in the chest, the man fell back, stunned. Then vanished in a burst of red light, teleported away by his retreating crew. The ships lifted off fast, leaving behind their wounded and broken machines. The widows stood breathing hard, armor cracked but spirits unbroken. The ranch was battered but still standing. And James was alive. Boone limped over, laughing through a bloody nose. "That was one hell of a welcome party," he said. James helped him sit. "They'll think twice before coming back," he replied. The widows gathered around James. Sci spoke, her voice soft but proud. "You did more than protect us," she said. "You led us. You gave us a future." James looked around at the burning wreckage. The dust still rising, the stars watching from above. "This land," he said, "it's ours now, and no one takes it from us." The sun rose slowly over the dusty hills of Adoria 5, golden light touching the broken fences, the scorched fields, and the blackened hulls of enemy ships that still smoked in the distance. The battle was over, the ranch had survived, and James Harlan was still standing. The wind carried the smell of metal, ash, and victory. The widows walked across the land with quiet steps, inspecting damage, helping the wounded, gathering what was left behind. Max the workbot beeped as it pushed debris into piles, mumbling to itself in glitchy Earth code. Boone and the other ranchers had stayed behind to help rebuild, their eyes still wide from what they had seen in. Alien women fighting like legends and an old rancher leading them like a war chief. James sat on the porch, his rifle across his knees. His face was dirty, bruised, but calm. He looked over the land, his land, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel empty. It felt full, not just with people, but with purpose. Soraya walked up the porch steps and stood beside him. She held a small silver box in her hands. "We found this," she said softly. It was in the wreckage of the command ship. James opened the box slowly. Inside was a small crystal, glowing blue and warm to the touch. "What is it?" he asked. Soraya smiled faintly. "Our memory core. It holds the last voices of our world. The songs, the names, the dreams. Now we can begin again." James looked at the sky, the wind brushing his face like an old friend. "Then I guess this isn't the end," he said. "No," Soraya replied. "It's the beginning over the next few weeks." The ranch became more than a home. It became a symbol. Travelers and ranchers came from other sectors to visit, to trade, to learn. They brought tools, seeds, stories, and sometimes broken hearts looking for healing. James welcomed them all. He never wanted fame, but it came anyway. Not for what he did, but for what he built. The widows stayed by his side. Each found their own path. Dea built a forge beside the barn, turning wreckage into tools. Armor and art. Vera the healer opened a clinic under the blue leaf tree, where humans and aliens came to be healed with a mix of old medicine and HFY knowledge. Elia taught children from nearby colonies how to move, think, and defend themselves with honor. Her laughter filled the fields almost every morning. Soraya stayed closest to James. Together, they kept the ranch running, expanding it, growing it into something stronger. She never pushed him, never spoke of titles or promises. But her presence was steady, like a heartbeat, like a quiet promise of something more. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the hills, James stood by Mary's grave under the blue leaf tree. He placed a small flower beside the stone one of the glowing plants the widows had grown. "You'd laugh if you saw me now," he said with a smile. "Me, the old fool, leading aliens, fighting off bounty hunters." Cooking purple soup and drinking moonroot tea. He paused. Brushing dust off the grave, but I think you'd understand too, he whispered. You always believed in second chances. Behind him? The widow stood quietly. Soraya stepped forward, holding something wrapped in cloth. We made this for you, she said. James unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a new ring metal shaped like both Earth and HFY designs. Strong and simple, this is not a marriage ring, Soraya explained. It is a bond ring, a mark of what you've done. Of who you are to us. James looked at them all, his heart heavy and light at the same time. I didn't do it alone, he said. None of this happened without you. Soraya stepped closer, her voice softer now. You gave us a home, she said. When we had nothing, you gave us your land. Your strength, your heart, you gave us hope. James nodded slowly and slid the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly, not just in size, but in meaning. The widow smiled, and for a long moment, the wind held still, like the land itself was watching and approving. Later that night, music played from the barn. Soft and strange, a mix of earth guitars and alien flutes. The widows danced under the stars. Laughing, singing, children ran through the fields, chasing glowing beetles and pretending to be heroes. And James. He sat by the fire, watching it all with a quiet smile. He was no longer alone, no longer just a rancher waiting for the end. He was a leader, a builder, a protector. A symbol of what could grow when trust was stronger than fear, and love was deeper than blood. And as the stars blinked above him, James Harlan whispered to the night, maybe life wasn't over. Maybe it was just beginning.